Hey there, everybody. This is Rev Dave Thompson, and we're trying something new today. So the Mevo camera has completely died. We don't know why, but we're going to go try it old school here. So thank you for trying out a new way of doing things. I'm just going to use my webcam, right? Thank you, Mac. So anyway, I'm Reverend Dave Thompson, and I'm a civil human minister, which means that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. And what that means for this Bible study is that I'm going to be looking at this as a human being, which means that I want to look at these teachings and pull out of it what is applicable to all humans across the board. And then I also want to do that in a civil manner, so respecting those basic shared human needs that we all have together. We're continuing in Matthew chapter 15, verses 29 through 39. And so if you do have Bibles, go ahead and join me. I'm going to read from my Bible that my father gave me in high school, that he spent a year kind of reading through and making marks in the margins and stuff for me. So let's go to 15 verse 29. And Jesus departed from there, skirted the Sea of Galilee, and went up on the mountain and sat down there. Then great multitudes came to him, having with them those who were lame, blind, mute, maimed, and many others. And they laid them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. So the multitude marveled when they saw the mute speak, the maimed made whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me for 3 days and have not eaten anything. And I do not want to send them away hungry, lest they faint on their way. Then his disciples said to him, Where could we get enough bread in the wilderness to fill such a great multitude? Jesus said to them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7 and a few little fish. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave to the multitude. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets full of the fragments that were left. Now those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And he sent away the multitudes, got into the boat, and came to the region of Magdala. Just a sidebar, at that end, we talked about 4,000 people? Yeah, 4,000 men. And then it says, and women and children. Typically back in those days in the ancient world, obviously we thankfully progressed as a society and as a species. But back then, usually when accounts were given, they were given account of how many men were there. And the women and children wouldn't generally be counted in those large numbers. I know this is an ancient world, of course, which is frustrating, but nonetheless, that's what that means. So if there's any confusion, hopefully that clears it up a little bit. Okay, so we have seen Jesus do this before, right? I mean, this isn't anything new, and it honestly gets a little bit common to us now, seeing, yet another 1,000 people fed with a couple loaves of bread and some fish, and all these miraculous events happening, and all these people being healed. And for me, I'm looking at this passage and I'm like, well, I don't really know what I can get out of this, honestly. I mean, it's just another story. But as I walked through it, there were some things that I did appreciate about this text, and I want to bring those out because I think that they do lend some benefit to us here and now, 2,000 years removed. And the first of it is that Jesus goes hiking. I'm a hiker, love it, love to be in the woods, love to be in nature. Nature's where I find my refreshment, fishing. I've been doing a lot of fly fishing lately, thanks to Shane, who's been encouraging me to get out on the river. But I love to hike also. And I love the fact that Jesus went up, it says he went up on a mountain. And that, he's essentially trying to get away from the crowd at that point. There's people who are following him to the tune of, it says 4,000 people. That's a lot of people. And anybody who's worked in crowds or in major chaos where there's a ton of people, you know that it's just exhausting work, that there's a lot that goes on, there's all these tedious things that have to be thought about. Jesus is trying to teach, he's also trying to heal people, he's also trying to, now feed them. And I would imagine that he's pretty exhausted right now. He's pretty tired. He's going up on this hill to hike to get away. And then, like it happened in the wilderness back when a couple chapters ago, Matthew tells us about basically the same thing, Jesus going to pray, and then all these people following him to the, figuring out where he is and basically just mobbing him there. And it got me to thinking that sometimes working can be exhausting. We're dealing with a lot right now in our society, and we're kind of exhausted. I'm exhausted today. I aside from the Mevo going out, which was wonderful, I'm exhausted just with the amount of things that are having to be thought about, right? We have to think about the masks that we put on, where we're going, who we're going to meet with, how we're going to get our job done, how we're going to take care of our families, the dynamics of having our spouses home at different times of the day or our family members home at different times of the day. All those things create a lot of stress. And just like in this situation where Jesus is going up on the mountainside, you wonder how in the world that he was able to get himself motivated to continue working, because as we saw in the passage, he started healing people again. And that led me to the conclusion that gave me the working title of this study, and that is that there's a secret sauce for strength, and it's in compassion. In this passage, Matthew, the author of this particular book, he makes a note of the fact that Jesus says to his disciples, "I am moved." And in the Greek here, this word is more about being moved in your guts, is how it's phrased, right? And in the ancient world, this basically means the seat of emotion. If they fall in love with somebody, or if they're upset or disappointed, you get those strange feelings in your stomach. So that's what the ancient world thought about emotions, is that they existed in our guts somehow. And so it says that Jesus was moved inwardly, basically in his innards is the word there, which essentially means, in their tongue, it means that he was moved in his heart. Like he had compassion on them. And then after he had that, he pulls together whatever loaves of fish and loaves of bread that he has and makes use of it, turns it into enough food to feed 4,000 men plus women and children. I think one of the most key ingredients in this passage is that a lot of times trying to find a place for strength and resolution, a way to buckle down and to continue work when we're exhausted. I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. It's easy for me to read the news and to get upset about the things that are happening, the divisiveness, the misinformation that goes on, the just sheer negativity. And it's hard sometimes for me to feel like I can continue doing it at times, to continue working. And I know a lot of you, maybe you're not involved in particular ministry, but you're involved in your work or whatever it is that you're passionate about. And it dawned on me that Jesus finds strength in this passage by being compassionate. And I found that was all of a sudden a really powerful way for me to find a motivation to continue working, to continue developing and continue my work. And that is to think about the people who are hurting, to think about the people who are far more worse off than I am in this situation right now, to think about the people who are doing without, who are struggling to find food for their children, who are trying to figure out how to pay the rent so they have a place to live, who are living on the cusp of homelessness. Those are the people that I choose to look upon, that I choose to focus my attention on. And then I find that I have something well up in me, like a spring of water or something that gives me a strength and a power. It's this feeling of love for these people, this feeling of identifying with them, and feeling the feelings that they have and using empathy to identify with their suffering. And that, for some reason, drives me to want to do my work more. It drives me to want to continue to provide a message of peace. It makes me want to continue to provide a message that we are more the same than we are different, that there is hope in this world right now, that even though everybody wants to divide us and give us negativity and tell us what we can't do, we can have peace. We can develop a new way of living together that will allow us all to enjoy our own faiths and our politics and our lifestyle without infringing upon other people. The last thing I want to point out is it may not be obvious here, right? This is a miracle stuff that we get to read a lot about Jesus, and it becomes old hat in some ways. But one thing I think that is important in closing here, when Jesus pulls together the bread and the fish that they did have, he gave thanks. And we saw this before in a previous example of him feeding 5,000 men, I believe. All of a sudden, rather than looking at everything that the problem that they were facing, the inability for them to address the issue, the distance between where they're at and where they need to be, he started with what they had and was grateful for it. Was grateful for what he had. I am grateful for a Mevo camera, even though it is not working right now. But I'm also grateful for a computer to be able to do this live anyway. And I'm grateful for you being a part of this Bible study and you being a part of me as I get to develop this study and this program and my ministry. And you get to experience all these weird things that are happening around me. And as part of this process, I'm so grateful for you in this. And I just want to encourage you this weekend to take a moment to think about others who may be suffering, to give them a chance to sit in your heart and on your mind, and let some compassion develop there. I know that I'm going to be doing that this weekend because it will give you strength. Love and compassion are powerful, powerful forces. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to being again with you live weekdays at noon, starting Monday next week. And until then, I want to say to you that I love you. And I hope that you choose to love yourself. It is the only love that we have any control over in this world. And now I invite you to join me as we go about the rest of our day and our weekend, loving our neighbors the same way. Thank you.